Ashfield, Maine, had a way of holding on to its past. The red brick textile mill on Main Street shuttered since the 80s still loomed over the river like an old soldier who refused to die. Kids tagged the walls, pigeons nested in the broken windows, and tourists stopped for photos of authentic New England ruin. Everyone knew the mill was just a corpse, so when the whistle blew again, it felt like the corpse had decided to breathe. It happened on a Tuesday in late October, at exactly 3:13 a.m. The sound was unmistakable, a deep, metallic shriek that used to signal the start of the morning shift. The blast rolled across town, bouncing off the hills and rattling window panes. No one admitted to hearing it at first. Folks in Ashfield were stubborn. But the next morning, word spread through the diner like wildfire. "Coot's sworn that whistle was torn down," said Earl Jenkins, the retired foreman, as he stirred his coffee. "It was," replied Maggie, the waitress. "My brother worked demolition, saw it carted off in pieces." Everyone nodded, uneasy. "Maybe it was the wind," they said. "A prank? Maybe." But at 3:13 a.m. the next night, it screamed again. Claire Dunn heard it from her bedroom above the hardware store. She sat up, heart pounding. Her husband Dave slept on, snoring softly. For a moment she thought of waking him, but something in the sounder cold, hollow edge made her stay quiet. In the morning, Dave seemed off. Over breakfast, he looked puzzled at the mug in his hand. "Where'd we get this?" he asked. "It's from your sister," Claire said. "Christmas last year." He frowned. "I don't have a sister." Claire laughed, waiting for the grin that meant he was joking. It never came. By the third night, the whole town was awake at 3:13, waiting. The whistle howled, long and lonely. The next day, the grocery clerk forgot her own address. An old couple couldn't recall the name of their only son. Sheriff Blanchard organized a search of the mill. They found nothing but rust and pigeons. The whistle tower was a jagged stump. "It's just some punks with a siren," the sheriff said, though his eyes betrayed him. Claire started keeping a list of things Dave forgot. At first, it was small stuff his sister, the brand of coffee they liked, the route to his job at the garage. Then, one morning, he stared blankly at her and asked, "Who are you?" It broke her. She called the sheriff. He'd heard a dozen similar stories. "Stay calm," he said. "We'll figure it out." But no one figured anything out. Night after night, the whistle wailed, and Ashfield unraveled. School children wandered the halls, unable to remember their own names. Old men forgot how to drive. The town's history, birthdays, marriages, even street names slipped away like water through cupped hands. A few people fled, but most stayed, as if leaving required a memory they no longer possessed. Claire refused to give in. On the 12th night, with Dave staring blankly at the TV, she grabbed a flashlight and drove to the mill. Fog clung to the riverbank. The mill loomed like a shadow of itself, windows black as drowned eyes. At exactly 3:13, the whistle erupted, a sound so powerful Claire felt it in her teeth. She stumbled inside. The main floor was empty, littered with rusted machines and feathers, yet the sound was deafening. Her beam found the stairwell to the old clock tower. She climbed, heart hammering. At the top stood the remains of the whistle, nothing but twisted pipes. In the center of the floor, a shape shimmered like heat rising off asphalt. It formed a figure, not a person exactly, but an outline of one, built of steam and echo. It pulsed with every blast. "What are you?" Claire whispered. The figure's voice came as a hiss inside her skull. "I am the keeper. I remember when none of you do." "Why are you doing this?" "Because you forgot first," it said. "You let the mill rot. You let time erase me. Now I erase you." Claire's flashlight flickered. She thought of Dave's empty eyes, of neighbors wandering like ghosts. "Take me instead," she said. "Leave the town." The steam figure tilted, almost curious. "One memory for all of Ashfield, a fair trade. Yes, Claire said, without hesitation. Then choose, it whispered. Choose the memory you will surrender. Claire's throat tightened. She thought of her wedding day, of the smell of lilacs in spring, of her mother's laugh. Any one of them felt like losing a limb. My name, she said finally. Take my name. The figure stretched, a sigh of boiling air. Done. The whistle stopped. When Claire stumbled home, the town was silent. Dawn crept over Ashfield like a tentative apology. Birds sang. Psst. No one else reported hearing the whistle again. Dave was waiting at the kitchen table, eyes clear. Hey, he said, smiling with recognition she hadn't seen in weeks. Where were you, honey? Claire smiled back. But inside, a hollow ache gnawed, because when Dave reached for her, he said, Good morning. What should I call you? But she had no answer. The band called themselves Hollow Pines, mostly because the name sounded like the kind of thing you'd see on a festival poster. But lately, festivals weren't calling. By October, they were desperate enough to take Joel's offer, a creaky old farmhouse he'd inherited from a great uncle no one liked to mention. Perfect for a recording retreat, he'd said. Cheap as dirt. So they packed their amps and a borrowed mixing board and drove north into the cold Maine woods. The place squatted at the end of a gravel road, paint peeling in long curls. Inside smelled of cedar and something damp. Still, it was quiet, far from neighbors, good enough. The first 2 days were all about setting up gear in the living room and arguing about tempos. Joel kept running cables, Sarah fiddled with her bass, and drummer Manny tapped out nervous rhythms on the window frame. At night, wind pressed against the boards and the house side like it remembered every argument ever shouted inside. On the third night, around midnight, a low hum drifted through the floorboards. Sarah froze, bass still in hand. You guys hear that? Manny cocked his head. Generator. Tay didn't have one. The sound was faint but deep, a note you felt more than heard. It pulsed in time with the heartbeat of the house. Joel grabbed a flashlight. It's coming from below. The root cellar door was hidden behind the pantry shelves. Joel swore he'd never noticed it before. Cold air breathed out when he pulled the door. The steps were slick stone, leading into darkness. The hum thickened, a low, rolling bass line that wrapped around them like fog. It wasn't random. It carried rhythm, a hypnotic groove that made their heads sway. Creepy as hell, Manny whispered, but his feet moved anyway. At the bottom lay a wide dirt floor and ancient shelves of jars. Their labels faded to nothing. In the center, a circle of blackened stones vibrated with the sound. Sarah set her bass against her hip and played a note to match the pitch. Perfect fit. The hum shifted, as if answering. Joel laughed nervously. Guess the house digs music. They went back upstairs, but sleep was impossible. The bass line kept pulsing, faint yet insistent. By dawn, it stopped. The next night, it returned, richer, almost like a melody under the hum. Sarah couldn't resist. She tuned her bass to the cellar's key and started to play along. The sound fused with her strings until it felt like her hands weren't her own. Notes poured out fast, beautiful, terrifying. Manny and Joel joined, adding drums and guitar. The air in the cellar warmed, thick with a coppery scent. When the last note faded, the hum died too. Sarah exhaled, trembling. That was incredible. They stumbled upstairs, half drunk on the sound. The following day, Sarah wouldn't stop playing. Her fingers blistered. She barely ate. Joel set up mix in the cellar. We captured this. We've got a record deal, for sure. That night, the hum began earlier, as if eager, chord, and played until dawn, chasing the impossible melody. When Joel finally stopped, sweat-soaked, he noticed Manny wasn't keeping time. The drummer's eyes were rolled back, sticks still pounding in inhuman rhythm. Manny, Joel shouted. The beat cut off. Manny collapsed, chest barely rising. They dragged him upstairs, panicked. He came to, with a weak smile. Couldn't stop, he whispered. It wouldn't let me. Joel wanted to pack up. Sarah refused. This is the best music we've ever made, she said, eyes shining with a feverish light. That night, she went down alone. Joel woke to a roar of bass so loud it shook the windows. He sprinted to the cellar. Sarah stood in the stone circle, hair whipping though there was no wind. Her bass growled like a living beast. The black stones glowed red. Sarah, Joel yelled. She didn't hear. The melody built deeper and deeper until Joel felt his own heart sink to it. For a second, he wanted nothing more than to step into the circle and join. Then Manny screamed. The lights burst. Darkness swallowed them, pulsing with the rhythm. When the sound stopped, Sarah lay motionless, bass strings snapped and smoking. The stones were dull again. Manny checked for a pulse. Nothing. They buried her behind the house before dawn, too stunned to speak. Joel and Manny left the next morning, leaving the gear behind. On the drive home, neither turned on the radio. 2 weeks later, Joel's phone buzzed with a new message. No caller ID, just an audio file. He played it. The cellar's bass line rumbled through the tiny speaker deeper, fuller than before. And, beneath it, unmistakable, Sarah's voice singing a wordless hymn that made Joel's teeth ache. The file ended with silence. Then, faint but clear, a whisper. Come, finish the song. Story 3 by Shutter Lane. The yard sale on Shutter Lane had the usual stuff. Sagging card tables, smashed china, a chipped bird bath. But it was the camera that caught Maurice's eye. Chunky old Polaroid, yellowed with age, sat in a box of vinyl records. A piece of masking tape on the strap read $5 works. The woman running the sale, a thin lady with hands like twigs, smiled. It's still good, she said. Just quirky. Marissa laughed. I like quirky. At home, she loaded a pack of instant film and snapped a shot of her cat. To print word out, faded and a little off color. It's perfect for the retro photo blog she kept. The next day, she brought the camera to work at the bookstore. Her coworker Nate struck a dramatic pose near the horror section. She clicked. The picture spit out and was blank. Guess it's busted, Nate said. But that night, after her shift, the image darkened on the counter. Nate, frozen mid-laugh. Marissa shrugged it off as slow-developing film. 6 days later, Nate was hit by a delivery truck on Main Street. The news rattled everyone. Marissa stared at the Polaroid pinned to her fridge, stomach twisting. She hadn't shown it to anyone. Coincidence, she told herself. Just a terrible coincidence. 2 weeks later, she brought the camera to her friend Jasmine's birthday dinner. Jasmine giggled, blowing a kiss at the lens. The photo slid out white as snow. That night, Marissa set it on her desk, uneasy. On the 6th evening, as the clock read 11:59, the image bloomed like a bruise. Jasmine, laughing, candlelight behind her. The next morning, Jasmine's apartment complex caught fire. She didn't make it out. Marissa stopped sleeping. She locked the camera in a drawer. But the thought of it pulsed in her mind like a headache. She tried to tell herself it wasn't real. That grief was making her imagine things. Still, she couldn't throw it away. One rainy afternoon, she heard a soft click from the bedroom. Her stomach dropped. The drawer was shut, but the camera sat on top of it now. A fresh photo humming in the slot. Hands shaking, she pulled it free. The picture showed her own kitchen tonight's dishes in the sink cant. Herself, back turned, pouring tea. Her hair in the photo looked just as it did now. Marissa called her mother, her voice a whisper. Mom, I just stay on the phone, okay? What's wrong? Think I'm going to die. Don't talk like that, her mother said firmly. Come, stay here. Marissa drove across town with a camera buckled in the passenger seat, rain streaking the windshield. Her mother hugged her hard, confused but worried. They stayed up late watching old movies. Midnight passed. No accident. No intruder. By dawn, Marissa dared to hope. The next day, she made tea in her mother's kitchen. When she lifted the kettle, she heard a faint worry from her bag. It's another photo. Her hands trembled as she peeled it open. It showed her mother's living room, sunlight pouring through the window. Marissa sat on the couch, head tilted, eyes closed. "Mom," she whispered, "I need to destroy it." She grabbed a hammer from the garage and smashed the camera until the plastic cracked and springs scattered across the floor. "Okay?" She tore out the remaining film, ripping each sheet in half. Relief came like a warm breeze. 6 days later, Marissa woke to a sharp chemical smell. In the kitchen, on the counter, lay a single Polaroid. It showed her mother's living room again. Only this time, the couch was empty. Marissa screamed for her mother. No answer. She found her in the garden, eyes wide, body still. The paramedics said heart attack. Marissa held the photo with shaking fingers. The time stamp on the back today's date. That night, unable to bear the silence, she checked the garage. The smashed camera was gone. Weeks passed. Marissa stopped going out, stopped answering texts. Neighbors whispered about the pale girl in the window. Then, one morning, the mail slot clattered. On the floor lay a small padded envelope. Inside was the Polaroid, perfectly whole, film pack loaded, and a single fresh photograph. Marissa stared at it, heart hammering. The picture showed a house on Shutter Lane. This house sits windows, dark. In the foreground, the camera rested on a table, and in the reflection of the glass door, someone was holding it up to take the shot. Someone who looked exactly like her. She turned the photo over. No date, just a sentence scrawled in black ink. 6 days. Study for by Splinter Choir, Farnham, Maine, was the kind of mill town that barely made the map. 2 streets of clapboard houses, a shuttered textile plant, and woods so thick they seemed to breathe when the wind blew. In late September, the first whisper came. It was dusk when 9-year-old Lily Harper heard it soft as a lullaby floating from the tree line behind her yard. A tune like children humming, high and sweet, and woven into it, a name, Lily, Leli. She froze, heart hammering. "Mom?" her mother called from the kitchen, but the song wasn't hers. The woods sang again, a rustle shaped like words. Lily ran inside and didn't sleep that night. The next morning, Lily was gone. Her bed was empty, window open to the cold dawn. The sheriff organized a search. They combed the woods for days, finding nothing but an odd patch of bark on a big maple, smooth, pale, shaped almost like a child with arms outstretched. Coincidence, people said, though they avoided that tree. 2 nights later, 12-year-old Ben Mason heard the song. This time, half the town heard it too. It floated through Farnham on a breeze, a lilting children's choir singing his name. Ben, Ben. His mother clutched him as neighbors locked their doors. But by morning, Ben's room was empty. Search party found another tree, its trunk bulging with a knot shaped eerily like a boy's face. Sheriff Donnelly stood pale in the dawn light. What the hell is happening? The whispers spread. Every evening at twilight, the woods sang someone's name. People tried everything: earplugs, loud music, prayers. It didn't matter. If the trees called you, you went. Sometimes whole families huddled together, weeping as the forest hummed their loved one's name. And by dawn, the chosen person was gone. Mara Kent ran the town diner. A widowed mother of 1, she served coffee to the search teams and tried not to listen when the twilight chorus began. But one night, the voices drifted right through the clatter of dishes. "Mara, Mara." Her son, Sam, clutched her apron. "Don't go, Mom." She felt the pull, a soft tug behind her ribs. She locked the doors, shoved furniture against them, sang loud nonsense songs with Sam until her throat ached. When morning came, she was still there. But outside, the maple by the diner door bore a fresh pail, knot shaped like a woman screaming. Mara trembled. She hadn't left. but something of her had. The next evening, the song returned, louder, harmonizing her name with Sam's. Mara, C-A-A-M. Sam's eyes went wide. Mara's chest tightened. She knew they couldn't both stay. At midnight, she packed a small bag. "We're leaving," she told him. They drove through the night, past the county line, heartbeats matching the thrum of tires. For a moment, she dared to hope. Just before dawn, Sam stirred awake. "Mama," he whispered. From the roadside pines came a faint, unmistakable chorus. Mara, Sam. The trees beyond the highway swayed. Though the air was still, Mara pressed harder on the gas. Back in Farnham, Sheriff Donnelly gathered the few remaining townsfolk in the church basement. His face was hollow. "We have to fight," he said. Fire, axes, something. They marched into the woods with torches, their breaths fogging in the cold. The trees waited, silent. Then the song began, this time the entire town's names, layered in haunting harmony. One by one, people dropped their torches and stepped forward, eyes glazed. The sheriff tried to hold them back. The forest opened, branches curling like arms. The people walked into the dark, swallowed whole. Miles away, Mara heard the melody through the cracked window of her motel room. Sam slept fitfully, whispering along as if in a dream. She shook him awake, going farther. But when she turned to pack, he was at the door, eyes distant. "Sam," she cried. He stepped into the parking lot, toward a lone birch tree that hadn't been there the night before. Its white bark rippled like skin, whispering in that dreadful child choir tone. "Siam." Mara ran, grabbing his shoulders. The bark was warm beneath her palms. "Let him stay." The forest seemed to sing. "Join us." She pulled with all her strength. Sam blinked, breath shuddering. The tree's surface quivered, then stilled. They drove west as the sun rose. Behind them, the birch shrank in the rearview mirror, its bark bearing a faint outline of a small boy's face, eyes closed. Weeks later, Farnham was a ghost town. Travelers who passed through told of woods that hummed at dusk, of trees with human nods and pale scars shaped like outstretched hands. Some nights, if the wind was right, a distant choir carried across the hills a chorus of every name that had ever belonged to Farnham. And sometimes, just sometimes, the song would add a new name. A name from somewhere far away. Mara Kent, driving west with Sam asleep beside her, didn't hear the first faint note that drifted through the open window. Mara, Sam. But Sam stirred and whispered the melody in his dreams. Truckers called it the Ghost Spur, though on most maps it was just a faded gray line Route 29, the part the state had bypassed when they built the interstate. Locals swore the old road was blocked. Sometimes, late at night, GPS apps lit up a thin blue path and whispered, "Faster route found." That's what happened to Dan McCready at 2:14 a.m. on a rain-slick Tuesday. Dan was a long-haul driver hauling frozen poultry to Boston. He'd been on the road for 12 hours, eyelids heavy. When his phone chirped a new route, it promised a 20-minute shortcut. He barely thought before tapping accept. The turnoff appeared without warning, a cracked sign half hidden by pine branches. Letters flaking to nothing. As soon as he turned, the rain eased and the pavement smoothed like fresh blacktop. His radio hissed to silence. The woods crowded close. No other headlights in sight. 10 miles in, a neon glow bloomed ahead, a diner sign buzzing red and white. "Betty's Stop." Dan frowned. He knew every diner on his route. This wasn't one. Yet the parking lot was warm with light and smelled faintly of bacon. Inside, the diner looked freshly scrubbed. Chrome stools, checkerboard floor, a jukebox humming an old country tune. Only one waitress stood behind the counter, hair in a perfect 1950s flip. Her name tag read Betty. "Coffee?" she asked. voice like a song from an AM radio. Don nodded, suddenly starved. The coffee arrived, dark and steaming. It tasted like the first perfect cup after a long night trich, almost sweet. Long haul? Had he asked. Yeah, he said. Didn't think anything was open out here. We're always open, she said with a smile that never touched her eyes. A lone man sat in the corner booth, face hidden by a trucker cap. He didn't move, didn't eat. Dan finished the cup and felt the fatigue drain away like melting ice. He hadn't felt this sharp in years. When he asked for the check, Betty slid a small slip of paper across the counter. There was no price, just one word. Soul. Dan chuckled. Cute gimmick. How much? Betty's smile didn't change. It's just what it says. He looked closer. The words seemed burned into the paper, the letters faintly smoking. I think I'll just head out, he said, uneasy. The door wouldn't budge. Everyone says that, Betty said, gently, but you drank the coffee. The man in the corner finally looked up. His eyes glowed like dashboard lights. Best cup you'll ever have, he said. But nothing's free on Old 29. Dan's heart pounded. What happens if I don't pay? Betty's smile widened. You'll pay. Might be now, might be later. But we get what we're owed. Dan bolted through the kitchen door, searching for a back exit. It opened onto darkness, no parking lot, no road. Just a void that smelled of wet earth. He stumbled back to the dining room. It was empty. No Betty, no man. The neon sign outside flickered and died. His truck waited, engine silent. Dan floored it back to the highway. The road behind him disappeared into mist. By dawn, he reached Boston, shaken but alive. He convinced himself it was exhaustion, a dream with caffeine aftertaste. 3 weeks later, during a routine delivery, his GPS chirped again. Faster route found. This time, he ignored it. But the next night, the diner smelled coffee and bacons filled his cab, though the windows were closed. Months passed. Dan grew quicker on his routes, almost supernaturally alert. He needed less sleep, felt a strange humming under his skin. The drivers noticed his eyes looked brighter, pupils too wide. Then came the dreams. Betty pouring coffee that never cooled, the man in the corner tapping a slow, steady beat. One rainy night on I-95, Dan's brakes failed. The truck, jackknifed, crossed 2 lanes. In the frozen second before impact, he swore he heard a jukebox song in Betty's voice. Warm as steam. Time to settle the bill, hon. Witnesses said he vanished in the recap crushed, trailer overturned, but no driver found. Now, when storms roll over that stretch of highway, some truckers hear a GPS ping that promises a shortcut. Sometimes they catch the scent of coffee, hot and sweet, as neon letters flicker faintly in the trees. Betty's stop. Those who follow the blue line are never quite the same, if they come back at all. And somewhere on Old 29, a waitress with a perfect flip pours another cup, smiling for the next weary soul. Carver's Reach was a fishing village of weather-beaten docks and stubborn people, tucked against the rocky Maine coast. Every autumn, just after the tourists left, came what locals called the quiet Susanna, single week when the ocean turned to glass. No waves, no wind, no gull cries. Boats sat like toys in a tub. The calm always broke after 7 days, and the fishermen liked to say the sea needed its nap. But this year, the silence lingered. On the 8th day, retired lobsterman Ed Merrick stood at the end of the wharf, his coffee cooling in the still air, not a ripple. The horizon lay flat as a sheet of steel. Never seen it this long, said Lucy Tran, the town's young marine biologist. She'd come to Carver's Reach to study normal tides, though nothing felt normal now. Ed squinted at the horizon. Ocean's holding its breath. Don't like it. That night, the villagers gathered at Doyle's tavern. Its conversations were hushed, like voices might wake the sea. By the 10th day, the air itself seemed heavy. Nets stayed dry, fish markets closed early. Lucy set out sensors along the pier, but they recorded nothing, no current, no wind, not even the low thrum of deep water. "It's like the ocean stopped moving," she said. Children couldn't sleep. Dogs whined at doors. Even the old church bell wouldn't ring. The rope hung stiff. On the 12th night, Ed woke to a low vibration through the floorboards, not sound filling like a distant drum. He stepped outside. The moonlit bay was black and perfect. Then he saw it, a pale line across the water, far out, like something vast turning beneath. By morning, fishermen reported nets torn clean through, though no boats had gone out. The air smelled of copper and seaweed. Lucy compared notes with a colleague in Portland. "Seismic readings are strange," she said. "Brow's net, like a heartbeat." At dusk, the townspeople gathered on the bluff. The horizon bulged a long, slow rise, as if the sea itself were swelling. "Maybe an iceberg," someone said, but no one believed it. That night, the quiet deepened into something oppressive. The stars blinked out, one by one, hidden by a darkness that wasn't cloud. Ed dreamed of an ancient eye opening beneath the waves. On the 14th day, the ocean began to breathe. The water expanded and contracted in a silent rhythm, each pulse bigger than the last. The docks groaned. Lucy's instruments spiked, then died. "Something's under there," she whispered. "Something alive." A massive shadow rolled just below the surface, stretching half the bay. Children screamed as a slick, black fin, longer than a trawler, broke the water and vanished. Panic swept Carver's Reach. Some tried to drive inland, but fog swallowed the only road. The village felt sealed in a bell jar. Ed stayed by the pier, shotgun in hand, though he knew it was useless. "Can't run from the sea," he said. Near midnight, the water heaved upward. A shape emerged, so huge it blotted the moon. Not a whale, not anything from the world he knew. Its skin shimmered like wet stone, ridged and ancient. Towering spires curved from its back like cathedral arches. At the top, a single eye opened, the color of deep tide pools. The sight froze every soul on the shore. The eye regarded them as if remembering. Then a sound, not quite a roar, not quite a song, rolled across the bay, shaking the ground. Windows shattered. The church bell finally rang on its own. People dropped to their knees, some praying, some screaming. Ed felt the vibration in his bones. Lucy clutched her recorder, though it was dead. The creature lowered its massive head toward the village. Salt spray stung the air. Its breath smelled of storms and centuries. Then it spoke not in words, but in a low hum that filled their skulls. "We are awake." The meaning pulsed inside every mind. "You kept the sea quiet. You forgot the pact. We rise." The tides surged without warning. Water raced through the streets, lifting boats onto porches. The creature's body shifted, and the bay boiled. Grad grabbed Lucy's arm. High ground. They scrambled to the lighthouse as the village drowned beneath black waves. Houses splintered like driftwood. From the tower, they watched the giant turn, slow as a continent, and slip back into the deep. The water settled again, perfectly smooth. Dawn came. The village lay half submerged, silent as the grave. Survivors huddled on rooftops, eyes vacant. Lucy whispered, "It spared us." It shook his head. "No, it warned us." The sea remained flat, reflecting the pale sky. No gulls, no wind. Only the echo of that immense heartbeat, fading. Weeks later, rescue crews found Carver's Reach mostly empty. Many villagers were simply gone, as if the water had claimed them outright. The ocean stayed eerily calm for months. Fishermen on distant coasts reported strange tides, long silences, and sometimes an impossible shadow moving beneath the surface. And on certain windless nights, those who listen closely swear they can hear a slow, ancient whisper rising from the still water. We are awake. Kendra Ruiz had lived in the old brick building on Tremont Street for 6 months before she even noticed the maintenance door. It was tucked behind a peeling fire extinguisher sign in the laundry room. A slab of gray metal with no handle, just a tarnished brass plate, etched with the number 13. The superintendent, Mr. Halloran, always kept it padlocked. Boiler room, he said, when she asked. Off limits. Still, she caught him down there more than once at odd hours. Keys jingling, eyes nervous. Something about the way he slammed the door shut made her skin crawl. One humid July night, the power went out. The hallway emergency lights flickered. From the laundry room came a dull thud, like someone knocking. Kendra grabbed a flashlight and went to check. The maintenance door hung open, padlocked, dangling. A draft of cold, damp air rolled out. Aside was a narrow staircase of crumbling concrete, spiraling down into darkness. Faint, wet, smelled like old basements, and forgotten rain rose from below. She should have called Halloran. Instead, curiosity tugged harder. The first landing appeared after a dozen steps. A small, square room, bare, except for a single wooden chair. A man sat there, head in his hands. His clothes were out of time-a-brown suit from decades past. When Kendra gasped, he lifted his face. His eyes were wide and glassy, tears cutting streaks through the dust. "Please," he whispered. "Don't remember me." Before she could speak, the lights in the stairwell flickered. When they steadied, the chair was empty. Her heart hammered. Maybe she was dreaming, but the door above had vanished. Only the stairs spiraled downward. Kendra descended, shaky and sweating. The second landing held a woman in a bloodstained nurse's uniform, rocking gently. "Don't remember me," the nurse murmured, voice raw. "Please." "Forget." Kendra backed away, but the only way was down. It's the third landing, the fourth each, one a stranger. A boy with a cracked baseball bat, an old woman clutching a rosary, a middle-aged man with a wedding ring buried in his palm. Every one of them looked at her with desperate, pleading eyes. Every one whispered the same words, "Don't remember me." The staircase went on forever. Her phone showed no signal, no clock. Her flashlight battery held steady as if time had stopped. Finally, she reached a landing that looked different. Brick walls, damp with condensation. Mr. Halloran stood there. "Kendra," he said, sweat glistening on his forehead. "You weren't supposed to find this." "What is this place?" she demanded. His eyes darted past her to the stairs above, which spiraled upward into black. "This is where the forgotten live," he said. "People erased. Stakes the world decided to lose. I don't understand. They can only exist if someone remembers. Once you see them, they cling. They want a mind to hold them." He stepped closer, voice urgent. "That's why they beg. If you remember them, they stay. They feed." The air thickened. Whispers rose from every landing, hundreds of voices, soft and hungry. "Come back upstairs," Halloran said. "Close the door. Forget." Kendra tried to turn, but something warm and invisible wrapped around her mind. Faces of the strangers. Their names she didn't know yet, somehow did. The boy, the nurse, the man with the wedding ring. They pulsed like afterimages on her eyelids. A sudden thought struck her. If I forget, they disappear. If I remember, they live through me. Halloran reached for her hand. "You have to let them go." But the whispers grew louder, almost words. "Please, remember." Kendra's heart twisted. They were lost souls, weren't they? To forget them felt cruel. She whispered, "I remember." The stairwell went silent. Halloran's face drained of color. No, a surge of cold swept through. Shadows poured from the lower steps like smoke, wrapping around Kendra in a shivering embrace. Images flooded her, lives half-lived, deaths unmarked, moments no one had witnessed. Her mind blazed with names she'd never heard till now. Halloran stumbled back, eyes wide with fear. They have you now. The stairs above brightened, and he fled upward, his footsteps fading. Kendra tried to follow, but the steps kept shifting. Every landing she passed now stood empty, the chairs cold and wet. She finally burst through the maintenance door into the laundry room. Morning light streamed through the basement windows. The door slammed behind her, padlock clicking of its own accord. Days passed. At first, she tried to live normally, work, errands, dinner with friends, but the memories wouldn't leave. She remembered the boys' cracked bat, the nurses' trembling hands, the names Peter, Alva, James that came unbidden. And the more she remembered, the more she changed. She woke with damp concrete under her fingernails. Neighbors forgot her name mid-conversation. Her reflections sometimes lagged, staring a beat too long. One evening, she caught Halloran by the mailboxes. "You should have forgotten," he hissed. "Now they're in you. They'll never let go." That night, a knock came at her apartment door. When she opened it, the hallway stretched into darkness. A faint, spiral staircase waited where the elevator should be, winding down forever. From below rose the familiar whisper, soft as breath. "Kendra, don't remember us." But it was too late. Weeks later, a new tenant moved into the building. In the laundry room, he noticed an old gray door with a brass plate reading 13, the padlock hanging loose. He heard faint voices beneath the floorboards, murmuring a single name, Kendra. The heat came early to Maple Crest. Not the usual muggy July warmth. This was different. The air shimmered, thick as syrup, clinging to every breath. By noon, the blacktop on Lilac Drive softened underfoot like taffy. Inside the modest ranch at number 42, Marilyn Tate adjusted the thermostat for the third time. It read 18.9, though the AC roared like a jet engine. Tonight was book club night, and she'd promised her friends something cool to drink. Instead, the kitchen smelled of hot metal and wilted herbs. By 7 o'clock, the neighborhood shimmered in a wavering haze. One by one, the women arrived, fanning themselves with paperback copies of The Shadowed Lake. There was Gina, the school librarian with a laugh like shattered glass. Ruth, the retired piano teacher, whose thin smile never reached her eyes. Carla, the youngest, already glistening with sweat. "Feels like the world's on broil," Gina said, flopping onto the couch. "Power company swears it isn't a grid problem," Ruth added. "Maybe the sun's just closer this week." They laughed, but it sounded brittle. They tried to discuss the novel, but the air hummed. A low vibration like a distant furnace filled the house. Then Carla said, "Do you smell that?" "Like matches." Marilyn sniffed. A faint sulfur sweetness threaded through the heat. "Could be the neighbor's grill," she offered, though no one believed it. Halfway through their lukewarm iced tea, Gina wandered to the backyard. "I need air, even if it's hot." The others followed, drawn by something unspoken. The yard lay in dusky orange light. Fireflies winked like sparks. On the patio table sat a stack of old newspapers. Gina picked one up, rolled it tight, and without a word, struck a match from a box she had in tea been holding a moment before. The flame leaped high. Instead of panic, a strange pleasure lit her face. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Marilyn felt her own fingers twitch. The heat seemed to seep into her chest, filling a hollow place she hadn't known was there. By 10, the book discussion was forgotten. They fed the small fire with junk mail, cardboard, a few dry branches. The flames licked upward in steady, hungry rhythm. Carla's voice trembled. "This feels good." Marilyn thought of her late husband's flannel shirt folded in a drawer upstairs, the one she could never bring herself to donate. The idea of seeing it burn watching, the memories turned to smoke, suddenly seemed perfect. She ran inside, came back with the shirt. The fabric caught quick, sparks flying like tiny suns. A weight lifted from her heart as the cloth blackened and curled. The others followed suit. Ruth fed the fire a stack of handwritten piano compositions. Gina tore pages from her grandmother's Bible. Carla burned a baby blanket she'd kept since her miscarriage. Each item hissed and flared, and with each flare the night grew hotter. Sweat streamed down their faces, but they didn't stop. A dry wind rose, carrying the smell of scorched earth. Across the street, a dog barked once, then fell silent. Somewhere inside Marilyn's mind, a voice murmured, "More. Burn what binds you." They obeyed. Furniture, legs, photo albums, letters, even a wedding dress, anything with a memory, anything that hurt or healed, became kindling. The flames grew taller than the fence, orange against the purple sky. By midnight, the entire cul-de-sac glowed. Other neighbors stepped from their houses, eyes glassy. Without a word, they joined in, carrying heirlooms and keepsakes, feeding the communal blaze. The air vibrated like a struck gong. Asphalt softened, smelling of tar and heat stroke. Marilyn watched a man toss a violin into the fire, strings shrieking as they snapped. His grin was wide and empty. Then came the deeper smoke, thick, sweet, and wrong. It didn't rise, but curled downward, sliding along the ground like liquid shadow. The voice returned, louder. "Memory is fuel. Feed me everything." Gina swayed, eyes unfocused. "I could burn myself," she whispered. Carla nodded, mesmerized. "No," Marilyn said sharply, some fragment of sense clawing back. "Not people." But the fire roared, a sound like applause. Sparks whirled into shapes, faces, perhaps made of heat and hunger. Sirens wailed distantly, warped by the heavy air, but no engines arrived. One neighbor stepped into the fire and vanished without a scream. Another followed. Each body disappeared in a flash of white, leaving no ash. The others clapped, entranced. Marilyn backed away. The heat pressed against her like a living thing. She thought of her late husband again, not the shirt, but his smile, his laugh, the way he'd fixed the squeaky porch step. Those memories she could never burn. She ran. Behind her, the neighborhood roared like a furnace. The fire's light followed her down the street, vending shadows, licking at her heels. She didn't stop until she reached the highway, the cool night air finally breaking the spell. When she turned, Maple Crest was a tower of flame. No firefighters, no water, just a pillar of burning memory climbing into the stars. At dawn, the place was nothing but gray rubble and a faint, bitter smoke. Investigators blamed a gas main, but Marilyn knew better. Weeks later, she woke to another heat wave. In the quiet of her bedroom, she smelled faint sulfur. And from somewhere just beyond hearing came a soft whisper. "More?" Story 9 by Babysitter Tapes. The cardboard box sat on the top shelf of the hall closet, wedged behind a tangle of extension cords. Claire Benton almost didn't notice it when she was searching for the spare sheets. Dust filmed the lid, and a strip of brittle masking tape read, "Tapes minus 1,998. She carried it to the kitchen table and lifted the flap. Inside lay a cheap cassette recorder and 3 worn cassettes, each labeled in black marker. Story, night 1, 2, 3. Claire frowned. She'd bought this house only last year. The previous owners, the Harts, had moved away after their youngest went to college. She assumed they'd taken everything. Her 7-year-old daughter, Leela, wandered in, brushing cookie crumbs from her shirt. Said Mom. "Old tapes," Claire said. Probably music. That evening, after Lila was asleep, Claire's curiosity got the better of her. She slid the first cassette into an old boombox she'd kept from college. The tape hissed. Then a voice filled the room. It was a teenage girl, warm, sing-song, almost hypnotic. "Okay, sweetie," the girl said. "Tonight's story is about a man with a knife who waits at the end of a dark driveway. Claire froze. The voice sounded cheerful, but the words were pure nightmare. The story followed a stranger who crept through a quiet suburb, picking a house where a mother and daughter slept. The tale ended with the line, "And the moon stayed hidden, so no one heard the last scream." The tape clicked off. Claire shivered. Just a scary story, she told herself. A babysitter spooking a kid for fun. But something about the voice, soft New England lilt, lingered. Next night, she played the second tape. "Ready for another bedtime story?" the girl chirped. "Tonight's is about the bus driver who never made it home." This story described a midnight bus route, an empty intersection, and a fatal crash caused by invisible hands wrenching the wheel. Details were precise. Route 17, Elm and Carter Streets. Claire's stomach tightened. She grabbed her phone and searched the local news archives. A headline from July 1998 leapt out. "City bus driver killed in single vehicle crash at Elm and Carter." Date and location, perfect match. The article said the accident was unexplained. Claire paused the tape, heart pounding. The third cassette waited. She told herself to throw it away. Instead, at midnight, she pressed play. The same soft voice began. "This one's about a man who opens doors that should stay closed. He lives at 53 Rosemont Drive. He has a little girl who loves peanut butter cookies." Claire's breath caught. That was her address, and Lila loved peanut butter cookies. The story continued, describing a break-in through the kitchen window, a mother asleep upstairs, a child taken without a sound. Claire slammed the stop button. Her hand shook as she checked every lock and window. Leela slept on, unaware. Who was this babysitter? How could she know about a future murder 25 years later? Claire called the Harts the next morning. "Did you have a babysitter in the late 90s? A teenage girl?" Mrs. Hart sounded uneasy. "Yes. Her name was Melanie Pike. Sweet kid." "Why? Do you know where she is now?" A pause. "Melanie died in 1999. Car accident." "Why are you asking?" Claire hung up, chilled to the bone. That night, a storm rattled the windows. At 1 a.m., the boombox clicked on by itself. The third tape spun, though she'd ejected it. The voice whispered through the static. "Tonight is the night." Leela cried out from her bedroom. Claire grabbed a kitchen knife and raced upstairs. Her daughter sat up, eyes wide. "There's someone outside," Lila whispered. Lightning flashed, illuminating a tall silhouette at the kitchen window below. Claire's blood ran cold. Phone in one hand, knife in the other. She called 911 and crept down the stairs. The shadow moved across the backyards, slow, deliberate. The operator assured her police were on the way. The boombox hissed louder. Lenny's voice slid through the static. "Don't forget to check the basement door." Claire turned. The basement door stood ajar, though she was sure she'd locked it. From the dark below came the faint creak of a step. She gripped the knife, heart thundering. "I called the police," we shouted. No answer, just the soft whine of the storm. Then a figure emerged from the basement. A man in a rain-soaked hoodie, a knife gleaming in his hand. Claire didn't think she lunged. The two struggled, crashing into a side table. The knife clattered across the floor. Sirens wailed outside. Red and blue lights flashed through the windows. The man bolted for the back door, but two officers burst in, tackling him before he reached the porch. Afterward, the police told her the intruder was a drifter with a record of home invasions. He had no connection to her, but the question that haunted Claire was how the tapes had predicted everything. The detectives took the cassettes as evidence. Still, that night, when she tried to sleep, the boombox clicked on again empty. Through the hiss came a faint whisper, almost fond. "Good night, Lila." Story 10 Hollow broadcast the first time Eddie Farrell heard the signal. He thought his ancient car radio was just coughing through static. It was close to midnight on Route 6, the sky alive with a strange green shimmer from a solar storm the news had been buzzing about. Then a voice cut through the static crisp.com to clear for the battered old receiver. "Good evening, night travelers," it said. "This is Hollow Broadcast. Tonight's roll call begins." A list of names followed. Ordinary names. Carla Wintier's neighbor, Carla Winthrop. Okay? The voice ended with, "Until next storm." The radio clicked silent. The next morning, Eddie's phone buzzed with an alert. Local teacher Carla Winthrop dies in single-car accident. His stomach turned. He tried to rationalize. It was coincidence. Still, he couldn't forget the smooth, almost amused tone of that voice. 2 weeks later, another solar storm lit the sky. Eddie sat in his driveway, engine idling, scanning the dial. At 11:57 p.m., static thickened. Then the voice returned. "Welcome back. Tonight's roll call. More names. Darius Kim, 34. Nora Phillips, 71. Last on the list, Edward Farrell, 42. Eddie's breath caught. He killed the ignition and stumbled inside, heart pounding. He didn't sleep. By dawn, he'd convinced himself it was a sick prank. Still, he avoided driving, avoided everything risky. But accidents have imagination. That afternoon, while Eddie crossed Main Street, a delivery van jumped the curb. He barely dodged it, feeling the hot whoosh of metal inches from his side. Close, too close. Shaken, Eddie told his friend Marla, a late-night DJ at the local FM station. She frowned. Pirate radio, maybe. Could be someone with a scanner and a sick sense of humor. It called itself Hollow Broadcast. Marla's brow furrowed. Never heard of it? They checked FCC records. No such station. When the next solar storm arrived, Marla insisted on listening with him at the station. At 11:59, the lights flickered. Static swelled from the monitor speakers. Then the voice came smooth, low, unmistakable. "Welcome, listeners. Tonight's roll call. Name after name, each spoken with eerie precision." When the broadcast ended, Marla exhaled. "That wasn't on any frequency, I know." Over the next month, every name they'd heard turned up in the obituaries within days. Heart attacks, accidents, random tragedies, no survivors. They started recording. Each time a storm passed, Hollow Broadcast returned. The list was never long, always fatal. Eddie grew obsessed, mapping names, dates, causes of death. No pattern, just inevitability. One night, the voice broke its rhythm. "Edward Farrell," it said. "Again, your extension is granted." For now, Eddie shivered. It knew he was listening. He and Marla tried to warn the people on the next list, calling numbers, knocking on doors. Some laughed him off. Some got angry. Every one of them still died different causes, same certainty. Marla's voice cracked after another failed warning. "It's like the list makes it happen." Eddie stared at the printouts. What if it's not predicting? What if it's deciding? It's the biggest solar storm in a decade hit in late August. The sky boiled with emerald light. Eddie and Marla huddled in the station booth, a recorder running. The voice arrived exactly at midnight. "Final roll call for this cycle," it said, smoother than ever. Marla Jennings. Edward Farrell. Marla grabbed Eddie's hand. No. Static deepened like the hiss of an ocean. Then silence. They locked the doors, stayed inside until dawn. That morning, a freak wiring fire gutted the building's west wing. No one was hurt, thanks to their all-night vigil. Yet that evening, Marla texted Eddie a single line. I could still hear it. 3 nights later, she didn't answer his calls. He found her car crashed against a guardrail on the coast road, engine still warm, her body lifeless behind the wheel. The coroner said she'd swerved for no reason. Now, Eddie listens alone. He tries not to, but when the sky flares and the static hums, he can't help it. The voice is magnetic. Each storm night, it returns, a little clearer. Edward Farrell, it purrs. Your time draws near. Stay tuned. He stopped warning anyone. It doesn't matter. And the solar winds whisper through the dark. Eddie sits in his driveway, eyes on the trembling sky, waiting for the hollow broadcast to finally say his name for the last time.